Isaac Turner yanked the hood of his worn-out jacket over his head as cold rain slammed down hard on the sidewalk, one hand gripping a paper bag with a half-priced loaf of bread and a small carton of milk dinner for him and his daughter tonight. He was already late. Aurora's daycare would charge extra if he didn't show up in the next 10 minutes, and he couldn't afford another fee. Not after the car repairs, not after the heating bill, not after life kept kicking him down. As he stepped into the open square near the center of downtown, he caught sight of a woman in a red coat being cornered against the glass wall of a closed cafe. A man, tall and aggressive, stood inches from her face, gesturing wildly with one hand and gripping her wrist with the other. Isaac didn't think. He dropped the groceries, stormed across the sidewalk, and shoved the man back with one arm. "Back off," Isaac growled, planting himself between the man and the woman. The guy staggered, clearly not expecting the interruption. "Who the hell are you?" "I said back off." Isaac's voice left no room for argument. His eyes didn't leave the man's as he stepped forward again. "You touch her again, and I swear you'll regret it." The man scoffed, but after a long stare, he muttered something under his breath and walked off into the rain. Isaac turned around, expecting some frightened college girl or tourist, but the woman standing in front of him was calm, composed, and breathtaking. Wet hair clung to her cheeks, and her eyes sharp, bright, and full of something he couldn't name locked with his. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I am now." He picked up the soggy paper bag from the ground and winced as the milk carton slipped out, cracking open and spilling everywhere. The woman looked down. "That your dinner?" Isaac let out a breath. "Yeah, it's fine, just, I need to go." "Wait," she said, taking a step after him. "Can I offer you something? A ride, a coffee, anything?" He shook his head. "No, I've got to pick up my daughter." "Let me help you," she said again, her voice firmer now. "You just helped me." He paused. Something about her eyes made it hard to walk away, but he couldn't afford Pride. Aurora was waiting. "Fine," he said, "only if we stop by the daycare first." She nodded. "Deal. I'm Liora Langston, by the way." "Isaac Turner," he replied, already jogging beside her toward the sleek black car she pointed to at the curb. He didn't recognize the name, and he didn't notice the driver in the front seat tense slightly as Liora opened the back door and let Isaac in. 20 minutes later, Isaac walked out of the daycare with a sleepy 4-year-old curled up in his arms. Aurora had her cheek resting on his shoulder, a pink stuffed elephant dangling from her fingers. When he got into the car, Liora turned and smiled at the child. "Hi there." Aurora blinked up at her. "Hi." "You hungry?" Liora asked softly. Isaac was about to interrupt, but Aurora whispered, "Yes." Liora turned to the driver. "Take us to Bellmer." Isaac frowned. "What's Bellmer?" "You'll see." They pulled into the circular drive of a glowing restaurant that looked like it belonged in a movie. White lights, valet, a gold-plated sign. Isaac's jaw locked. "I can't afford this." "You're not paying," she said, already opening her door, "and they have grilled cheese." Inside, they were led to a private booth near a fireplace. Aurora was wide-eyed, her little fingers pressing into Isaac's arm as she looked around. A server brought warm bread rolls, and within minutes, a plate of grilled cheese and tomato soup appeared in front of Aurora, who devoured it happily. "You didn't have to do this," Isaac said quietly, watching her. "I wanted to." He paused. "That guy earlier, did you know him?" She looked away. "Not really, he just wouldn't take no for an answer." Isaac nodded. "Well, next time, call someone before it gets that far." She smiled faintly. "Next time I'll just yell for you." He almost smiled back but didn't. He didn't want to get attached. She was beautiful, kind, and clearly out of his league. She probably had a boyfriend or worse, a husband waiting in some penthouse. But still, there was something about the way she watched Aurora with soft eyes, or how she made sure the server brought warm milk without being asked. After dinner, she asked if she could drop them off. He gave her the address, embarrassed as they pulled up to the small duplex with peeling paint and a dim porch light. "This is us," he said, unbuckling Aurora and lifting her from the back seat. Liora looked at the house, then at him. "Can I see you again?" Isaac blinked. "Why?" She smiled. "Because I want to." He hesitated. "I'm not really dating right now." "I didn't ask for a date," she said. "Yet." He looked at her, really looked at her. She was dry now, warm, glowing from the car's interior lights. He couldn't read her, but something about her felt unsettling in a good way. "Okay," he said. "You know where I live." She grinned. "I do." He turned to leave, Aurora half asleep on his shoulder. "Hey," she called softly. He looked back. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once and closed the door behind him. Inside, he laid Aurora in bed and sat on the edge of the mattress, brushing her hair back gently. "You hungry, Daddy?" she mumbled. His throat tightened. "No, baby, I'm okay." He stood and walked back to the small living room, turning off the lights. Rain still pattered against the windows. He didn't know anything about Liora Langston. He didn't know she was a billionaire. And he definitely didn't know she was already falling in love. The next morning, Isaac was elbow-deep in a sink full of soapy dishes when he heard a knock at the door. Aurora sat at the tiny kitchen table, her coloring book open, crayons scattered in a wild arc. He dried his hands on a threadbare towel and opened the door cautiously. Liora stood there with a paper cup carrier and a warm smile. "I brought coffee," she said. He blinked. "How did you know I drink coffee?" "I didn't," she said, handing him one of the cups. "One's black, one's with cream and sugar. I figured you'd like one of them." He took it, still unsure what to do with her. "Thanks, you didn't have to come all the way out here." "I was in the neighborhood," she lied effortlessly, even though her tailored coat and spotless boots said otherwise. "Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure." She walked in slowly, taking everything in without comment. Aurora lit up when she saw her. "Hi again," the little girl said. "Hi, sweetie," Liora replied warmly. "You working on a masterpiece?" Aurora held up a drawing of a lopsided elephant holding a flower. "It's for Daddy," she said proudly. Isaac cleared his throat. "She's obsessed with elephants lately." Liora crouched beside the girl. "I love it. I bet it'll look perfect on the fridge." Isaac leaned against the counter, watching her interact with Aurora like she'd done it 1,000 times. It was unsettling how easily she fit in, like she belonged in their tiny kitchen with its flickering light and cracked linoleum. "You didn't really just come for coffee," he said. She straightened, brushing a stray hair from her cheek. "No, I didn't." "So what is it?" "I've been thinking about you," she said, not coy, not shy. "And I wanted to ask if you'd let me take you both out again, somewhere different." "I don't do charity," he said, more harshly than he meant. She blinked but didn't flinch. "That's not what this is." "I'm a single dad working 2 jobs. He stopped himself before saying what he was really thinking. "I'm what?" she asked, stepping closer. He drained half the coffee in one long drink. "You're clearly from a different world." "Maybe," she said, "but that doesn't mean I don't understand things." He met her eyes. "What do you want from me, Liora?" "I don't want anything," she said. "I just like being around you and her." He didn't know what to do with that. He wasn't used to someone liking him without needing something in return, not since Claire left. She looked around the kitchen again. Would it offend you if I asked to take Aurora to see the aquarium today? I'd be with her the whole time, you could come too, or if you have work, I'd understand. He paused. Why? Because she's amazing, and because I think she'd love it, and because I want to. He looked over at Aurora, who was now humming to herself, her little feet swinging under the chair. Give me 10 minutes, he said. An hour later, they stepped out of the subway at the waterfront. Isaac hadn't taken a day off in weeks, but he'd called in to his boss at the warehouse and claimed a family emergency. It wasn't entirely untrue. Something about this woman was slowly unraveling the hard knots he'd tied around his life. Aurora was buzzing with excitement as they entered the massive glass building. Inside, tanks glowed with blue light, and sea creatures swam in slow, hypnotic waves. Liora held her hand without hesitation, and Isaac found himself trailing behind them, watching. They stood in front of a tunnel where sharks glided overhead, and Aurora pressed her nose to the glass. Did you come here a lot as a kid? He asked Liora, keeping his voice low. No, she said. My parents traveled a lot, mostly work. Had tutors, staff, but not a lot of family time. He looked at her. So you grew up with money. She didn't deny it. Yeah. He folded his arms. Figures. She turned to him. Does that make you not trust me? I don't know. He watched Aurora press a hand to the tunnel wall as a stingray glided past. I just don't understand why someone like you would bother with someone like me. I don't see someone like you, she said. I see you, and I like what I see. He didn't know how to respond, so he said nothing. Later, they sat on a bench overlooking a massive coral reef tank. Aurora was curled up between them, exhausted but happy. Liora leaned closer. Can I ask you something personal? He nodded. Where's her mom? Isaac looked down at his daughter. Left when Aurora turned 2, said she wasn't cut out for this kind of life. Haven't heard from her since. She didn't pity him. She didn't offer empty words. She just nodded. Do you ever think about dating again? She asked after a long silence. Not really. I don't have the time or the energy. Well, she said, standing and stretching. If you ever do, I'm not hard to find. He looked up at her. You're full of surprises. She smiled. You have no idea. That night, after they got home and Aurora was asleep, Isaac sat on the edge of the couch staring at the coffee cup she'd left behind. Her name was printed on the sleeve in neat black pen. Liora Langston. He typed it into the search bar on his phone, curiosity getting the better of him. The first result made his blood freeze. CEO, Langston Holdings, Billionaire. He dropped the phone onto the couch as if it burned. He had just spent the day with one of the wealthiest women in the country. And she was looking at him like he was the one with something to offer. Isaac stood outside the warehouse, his breath fogging in the early morning chill. The phone still felt heavy in his pocket, like it carried the weight of a truth he hadn't wanted to find. He'd barely slept, and when he had, it was fractured his mind replaying Leora's laughter, the way she leaned close without hesitation, how easily she'd walked into his life without asking for permission. He hadn't told her he knew yet. He wasn't sure what to do with the knowledge. What did someone like her want with someone like him, and why hadn't she told him? A horn honked twice behind him. He turned to see Marcus, his friend and occasional babysitter, pulling up in a dented blue sedan. She's already had breakfast, Isaac said, opening the back door and helping Aurora into her booster seat. There's leftover soup in the fridge if she gets hungry again. Marcus gave him a look. You sure you're okay, man? You look like you fought with a snowplow and lost. I'm fine, Isaac said, forcing a tight nod. I just didn't sleep much. Marcus raised a brow but didn't push. All right, I'll keep her till 5 unless you call me. Isaac shut the door and stepped back, watching the car pull away. Then he turned toward the warehouse, where hours of backbreaking labor waited like a silent punishment. By the time his shift ended, his shoulders ached and his hands were raw. He stepped outside, expecting the cold air, the bus stop, the long ride home. But instead, there she was. Liora leaned against a silver car parked across the street, a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, her eyes locked on him like she'd been waiting hours. He didn't move. She crossed the street slowly, her boots clicking against the pavement until she stood right in front of him. "You looked me up," she said. He didn't answer. "You know who I am now?" He gave a short nod. "I do." "Are you mad?" "I don't know what I am." He looked at her, and for the first time there was distance in his gaze. "You could have told me. You had plenty of chances." "I didn't lie," she said. "I just didn't volunteer everything." "That's not exactly a defense." "I didn't want it to change anything," she said. "I liked how you treated me when you thought I was nobody." "I didn't think you were nobody," he said quietly. "I thought you were kind, brave, normal." She winced. "You want me to apologize for being rich?" "I want you to be honest," he said, "because I don't have room in my life for guessing games." Liora stepped back slightly, her expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to lie to you, but I won't apologize for who I am. I didn't choose to be born into this. I just chose not to let it define me." He studied her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the articles he'd read, the corporate headlines, the photos of her in gowns beside men in tuxedos. She looked different now, less polished, more real, but the truth clung to her like perfume. "I can't give you what you're used to," he said. "I'm not asking you to. I live paycheck to paycheck. I have a daughter who means the world to me. I don't have time for someone who can fly away the second things get hard. I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now," he said, voice low. "But what happens when Aurora gets sick and I can't afford a hospital bill? What happens when I can't take you to a fancy restaurant because I'm counting coins to pay rent?" She stepped closer again. "Then we eat takeout on the floor of your apartment and watch cartoons with Aurora. I don't care about the rest." He didn't believe her, not yet, not fully. "I need time," he said. She nodded. "Take it, but don't shut me out." He didn't answer. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "This isn't a handout," she said, pressing it into his hand. "It's something I think you need to see." He waited until she was gone before opening it. Inside was a photo. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6, sitting on a grand staircase, staring out at the camera with hollow eyes. On the back, in slanted handwriting, were 3 words. "I was her." Isaac closed his fist around the image and walked away. 2 days passed. He went to work. He came home. He kissed his daughter's forehead every night and told himself he was fine. But he wasn't. Because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Liora's face. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, just the woman who knelt beside his daughter and admired a crayon elephant without a trace of condescension. On the 3rd day, he picked up the phone and called Marcus. "Can you keep Aurora overnight?" Marcus paused. "Yes, sure, everything okay." "I just need a few hours." He hung up, changed his shirt, and took the subway across the city. The Langston Tower was impossible to miss, glass and steel stretching toward the sky, guarded by a man in a sharp suit who didn't look impressed when Isaac walked in wearing jeans and a faded jacket. "I'm here to see Liora Langston," Isaac said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." The man didn't move. "Tell her Isaac Turner is here," he said. "She'll know." A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Liora stepped out. heels clicking, expression unreadable. "I didn't think I'd see you here," she said. "I didn't think I'd come. And yet..." I couldn't stop thinking about that picture. She waited. "I don't know how to make sense of this," he said, "but I don't want to walk away from it." Her eyes softened. "I can't give you the world," he said, "but I can give you honesty, and can show up." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "That's all I want." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. "I'm not afraid of your world," he said, "as long as you're not afraid of mine." She smiled, real and gentle. "I'm not afraid of anything," she whispered, "not anymore." They stood there, in the middle of a lobby made of marble and gold, two people from opposite lives, holding on like maybe, just maybe, it could work. And for the first time in years, Isaac believed it might. The sky blushed pale gold as Isaac stepped onto the rooftop garden of Langston Tower. The air was crisp, laced with the faintest scent of jasmine, and something warmer, something that reminded him of cinnamon and sunlight. He hadn't expected this. Not the soft string quartet playing near the edge of the terrace, not the small crowd of people dressed in quiet elegance, and certainly not the sight of Liora standing beneath a canopy of hanging lanterns, her hair swept back like moonlight caught in motion. He felt underdressed in his cleanest shirt and borrowed blazer, but he didn't care. Not anymore. Liora caught sight of him, and her expression shifted relief, anticipation, and a flicker of something deeper all at once. She made her way toward him, not rushing, just walking like she knew he'd always be there when she arrived. "I thought you said this wasn't a date," he said. "It isn't," she replied. "It's more than that." He raised an eyebrow. "I wanted you to see my world," she said. "Not the boardrooms or the headlines, just this, the part I never show anyone." He looked around. The rooftop wasn't ostentatious, despite the obvious wealth it had taken to build. It was peaceful, quiet, intimate. "And you invited all these people to see it too?" he asked. She shook her head. "They're staff, friends, people who helped me make this happen." "This?" he asked. Liora turned and gestured behind her, where a tall easel was covered in a white cloth. A man in a vest stepped forward and pulled it away, revealing a rendering of a new building, a community center with a library, classrooms, and a bold, colorful sign that read, "The Aurora House." Isaac stared. "What is this?" "It's a non-profit project," she said. "Free daycare, after-school programs, job training for single parents. It's already funded. Construction starts next month." He looked at her, speechless. "You once told me you don't do charity," she said, her voice quiet. "This isn't that. This is partnership. I want you to help run it." He blinked. "Me?" "You have experience. You know what people need, and more than that, you care. That's something no degree can teach." He stepped closer to the rendering, his throat tight. "You named it after her." "She changed something in me," Liora said. "You both did." Isaac turned back to her, his chest heavy in the best way. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it," she whispered. "Say you'll take this leap with me." He didn't hesitate. "I will." The music shifted behind them, and someone dimmed the lights. The lanterns glowed brighter, casting a warm halo around them. Liora exhaled. "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That I'd scare you away, that I'd ask for too much too fast." "You didn't," he said. "You just asked for something real." She smiled at him, and this time it wasn't polished or poised. It was raw, hopeful, and unmistakably hers. "I want to be with you, Isaac," she said. "Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, just as someone who fell in love with the man who stood in the rain to protect a stranger." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You weren't a stranger." She tilted her head. "What was I then?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded drawing. Aurora's lopsided elephant, carefully preserved. The start of everything. She laughed, her eyes glistening. Can't believe you kept that. She told me it was a gift, he said. Turns out she was right. The music swelled again, and without another word, he pulled her gently into a slow dance. They swayed beneath the lanterns, the city stretching out around them like a promise. Neither of them cared who was watching. Afterward, they sat on a bench near the edge of the terrace, the city lights glittering below. I want to build a life with you, Liora said, her voice calm but sure. Not just a project, not just a romance, a real life. Messy, complicated, beautiful. Isaac watched her. That's what I want too. Then let's do it, she said, together. He nodded slowly, but I have one condition. She arched a brow. Oh. Next time we go to the aquarium, he said, you're the one buying the grilled cheese. She laughed, the sound echoing off the glass and stone around them. Deal. The night deepened, but neither of them moved. They didn't need to rush. For the first time in a long time, there was no chasing, no running, just two people who had finally found what they didn't know they were missing. A few weeks later, beneath a sky full of spring stars, Isaac stood in a quiet garden behind the Aurora House. Children's laughter echoed from the front yard. Inside, volunteers were setting up bookshelves, painting murals, and arranging tables for the grand opening. Aurora darted out of the building in a floral dress, her shoes untied and her face smeared with paint. Daddy, she called, look. She held up a small paper crown made of glitter and tape. Isaac crouched and kissed her forehead. It's perfect. Liora appeared behind her, barefoot on the grass, holding a tray of cookies she'd helped bake with the kids. She caught Isaac's eye. We did it. He stood and pulled her close with one arm. No, you did. She shook her head. We all did. A bell rang, signaling the first official gathering. Families were arriving, laughter and greetings blending into a joyful hum. Isaac looked around, heart full. He had a daughter who was thriving, a woman who loved him without conditions, and a future that didn't terrify him anymore. He'd chased away a man in the rain, not knowing it would lead to all of this. But looking at Liora now, her hand in his, he realized something else. Sometimes, love doesn't just arrive. Sometimes, it finds you when you least expect it and refuses to let go. The scent of fresh plaster and new paint still lingered in the main hallway of the Aurora House, the walls now alive with hand-painted murals of stars, trees, and wild animals. A week had passed since the official opening, and Isaac found himself arriving early most mornings, unlocking the doors before the sun had fully risen. He didn't just feel like a part of something anymore, he felt like he belonged. He stood in the kitchen, sorting a delivery of donated food, when Liora appeared in the doorway holding a clipboard and biting the end of a pencil. Did you know we're already at capacity for next month's parenting workshops? She asked, walking in and setting the clipboard down beside a crate of oranges. That's a good problem to have, Isaac said, writing a number on the dry erase board above the pantry shelves. She leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. We might have to start a waitlist. He glanced over at her. You sound disappointed. I'm not, just surprised we hit demand that fast. You shouldn't be. You made something people needed. She tilted her head. We made it. He turned back to the board, trying to hide the smile tugging at his mouth. Liora stepped closer, lowering her voice. You've been here every morning before I even get in. You're not sleeping, are you? I sleep, he said, just not much. She reached out and tugged gently on his wrist until he looked at her. You don't have to prove anything to me. I'm not trying to prove anything, he said. I just want this place to work. It already is. They stood there for a moment, the hum of a refrigerator and distant laughter from the front playroom filling the silence. "Isaac," she said softly, "I have an idea." He looked at her warily. "That's either very good or very complicated." "Both." She pulled a glossy folder from her satchel and laid it on the counter. "Langston Holdings owns a property in Vermont. It's a retreat center completely private, surrounded by forest, with cabins and a lake." He glanced at the folder but didn't touch it. "Okay. I want to take you and Aurora there, just for a few days. No meetings, no construction updates, no schedules, just time." He hesitated. "You want to take us on vacation?" "I want to take us somewhere where we can breathe. We haven't had a moment to just exist, Isaac. You've been running full speed since the day we met." He frowned, running a hand through his hair. "It's hard to stop when you've spent years trying not to fall behind." "I know," she said, "but you're not alone anymore. You don't have to outrun everything." He studied her. This woman who had once stood in the rain like a question mark, and now stood in front of him like the answer. "All right," he said, "we'll go." She smiled, and for the first time in days, something unknotted inside him. 3 days later, they arrived at the retreat. The cabin was nestled between tall pines, with a wraparound porch and wide windows that looked out onto a still, glimmering lake. Inside, it was quiet fireplace ready to be lit, soft blankets draped over low couches, and a kitchen stocked with fresh groceries. Aurora ran from room to room with gleeful abandon, her stuffed elephant swinging from one hand. Liora unpacked a basket of books and set them by the fireplace. "I thought we could read tonight." Isaac raised an eyebrow. "You read?" "Obsessively," she said, "especially things with dragons." That night, they roasted marshmallows on the back deck, Aurora curled up on a swing with a blanket wrapped around her small shoulders. Liora sat beside Isaac, her head resting against his arm. "I don't think I've ever felt this still," he said, gazing out at the moonlit water. "It's peaceful, isn't it?" "It's more than that. It's quiet in a way I forgot existed." "You deserve it," she said, "both of you." He turned toward her. "What happens when this ends, when we go back?" "We keep choosing each other," she said. "Wherever we are, no matter what changes." "You say that like it's easy." "It's not," she replied, "but it's worth it." He pulled her closer. "I wanted all the mess, the late nights, the unexpected, as long as it's with you." She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "Then let's build something that lasts." He kissed her then, slow and certain, like a promise sealed under the stars. The next morning, they woke to birdsong and sunlight streaming through the curtains. Aurora padded into their room, hair tousled and dragging her blanket behind her. "Can we go fishing?" she asked, climbing onto the bed between them. Isaac laughed. "Do you even know how to fish?" "No," she said, "but I want to learn." Liora sat up and stretched. "Looks like we've got a new adventure." Days passed in a golden blur, paddle boats on the lake, board games by the fireplace, lazy breakfasts that turned into lunch because no one wanted to move. Isaac hadn't realized how much he'd needed to stop, to just be, until he did it. On their last evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Liora pulled something from her coat pocket and handed it to Isaac. It was a small velvet box. He froze. "Liora." "Open it," she said. Inside was a simple silver key, not flashy, not symbolic in some abstract way, just a key. "To what?" he asked. "Your home," she said. "The one I bought for us. It's close to the Aurora House, big enough for guests, a real backyard, a room just for books." Aurora picked the color of her walls already. He stared at the key, then at her. "I wanted to wait until you were ready," she said, "but I realized this isn't just my life anymore. It's ours." He didn't speak. He just reached out and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as Aurora wrapped herself around his leg. They returned to the city as a unit, not a pair of people finding their way, but a family. The house was everything she said and more. Warm, lived in, full of light and laughter and the quiet certainty that they weren't going anywhere. Months passed. Isaac took over the day-to-day operations at the Aurora House, building programs and mentoring volunteers. Liora balanced her corporate world with community work, often slipping away from meetings to read with Aurora after school. One evening, as spring settled in the air, Isaac stood in the backyard watching Aurora chase bubbles across the grass. Liora came up behind him, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked through that square that night?" she asked. "All the time," he said. "And I think fate's a lot louder than people give it credit for." She smiled and slid her hand into his. "I love you," she said. He turned, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I love you more than I ever thought I could again." They kissed as the sun dipped low, the sky stretched in pink and gold above them. Aurora squealed in the distance, a bubble popping against her nose. And everything was exactly as it should be. Love didn't save them. They saved each other. And together, they built a life they never thought they'd find. One made of second chances, quiet bravery, and the kind of love that doesn't just survive, it thrives.